Hey friends, it's Aislinn.
And Joe.
And I am super excited to now have a playlist on the Aislinn Campbell YouTube channel.
Dinner Table Talks.
Exactly. So while you're here on my YouTube channel, subscribe to Aislinn Campbell. You'll see all the cool stuff I'm putting out.
Super cool.
And be sure to like this podcast as well.
And while you're listening, go over to your favorite podcast platform. You know the whole list. Go wherever you go and like, rate, and subscribe to us there as well. It helps us out.
So pull up a chair, grab your favorite beverage.
We have got so much to talk about.
Well, it was fun getting a chance to dress up today and put on my straw hat, going to a Kentucky Derby themed graduation party.
I texted Savannah, I said, we're going to go to my cousin's daughter's graduation party, and the dress is Kentucky Derby.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, that sounds hick. I said, Google it. It's the opposite of hick. But then I realized, like, my closet, I don't have a ton of Kentucky Derby, like, at the ready.
Graduation season is a bigger deal to us this year because we have another one of our kiddos graduating. So it's just a lot of emotions about that. So being there with the parents and seeing everyone all dressed up today was really nice. And it gave us the opportunity to go into town on a Saturday and put our fancy clothes on. Yes, I did put on a dress. I even shaved my legs a little bit.
I had a perfect hat, though. And as long as you have the perfect hat, you can pull off anything as Kentucky Derby, I think.
Exactly. As long as you have the perfect hat, you're good. You're good to go. So we did that, and then we had a chance to take Savannah and go eat lunch. And Savannah did not show up in her Kentucky Derby. She showed up as Savannah, and I appreciate that too.
While there, I said, let's go eat some lunch. And the three of us are smart. Let's come up with a place we've never been or haven't been in a long time where we can accommodate everyone's tastes while we do accommodate your gluten-free requirement.
And you actually pulled out the phone and did a search of like Asian food restaurants.
Well, we'd come to that conclusion. Asian food. Where do we go?
That's how smart we are. We're smart enough to pick up our phones and do a search of Asian food restaurants. So we started naming off places, and he got to Hom Pom. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's where we need to go.
Never been.
A friend of mine owns that place.
Intended on going forever.
And I've wanted to try to figure out ways to be a part of what she's got going on over there. And I know her values in terms of food, and I know that her and I actually have a lot in common, but we haven't made a lot of connections yet. But I want to make connections because I enjoy the connections that we have made. And so today I was trying to just not cause a super stir, but I didn't know for sure what stuff was gluten-free on the menu, and she was busy. Like the restaurant was busy.
You Googled ramen noodles and learned that those are not gluten-free generally?
Yes, and I know like usually curry, if I get a curry, that's fine.
Over rice, yeah.
Yeah, but I just wasn't sure, and I just didn't ask questions. And sometimes I do. I'm sure that those of you who are listening that are like, she didn't ask questions, what? But I have this way about me sometimes that sometimes I'm having a struggle communicating, asking for what I need. And that's it's a part of my personality, whatever.
So double up on the edamame and you'll be fine?
Exactly. So I just thought, like, I can sit here, I can eat some delicious edamame and drink this hibiscus tea, and we'll move on, right? And what I knew about this place and could already see the evidence of was that you and Savannah were going to love it because I knew she was a good chef.
And Savannah loves ramen.
Yeah, and she makes ramen and pho and wings and just all this delicious, it's Asian fusion is what she calls it.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether I can eat anything, I want to take them there and I want to go support Jessica. And then Jessica comes out to serve it and she goes, oh, hey, I didn't realize you were here. And finally she looks at me and she goes, are we missing a plate? And I said, oh, I've just gotten to the point where I'm so intolerant and so allergic to the wheat, gluten, I don't know what it is, but it's all of that stuff. I just can't.
All the good noodles.
I just can't. I don't want to take any chances. And when it comes to Asian food, they actually often use things that are not gluten-free in their sauces and stuff like that
too. Sure, a thickener, flour, that makes sense.
Sure. And she just immediately looked at me and she goes, you know that I'm a medicine chef, right? Well, even my response to that was, I guess I didn't know that. And I don't know even what that means exactly.
My response is what Savannah said when she left. And that's, what's a medicine chef?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, immediately when she said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. There are special dietary needs. There are medical chefs that work in senior living centers
Sure.
and, all kinds of, basically I've gotten even more strict. Like I've just gotten so strict. I'm actively trying not to encounter gluten and wheat.
And we can do it at home easy.
Right, well, I know what I can eat at home.
Right.
Yeah. She goes, well, I want to make you something. She goes, I'm going to make you a salad. She goes, are you interested in trying a salad? It won't take long to make it. And she goes, do you like spicy? And I said, yes, I like spicy. And she goes, and you don't eat meat. Okay, I'll be right back. And she just almost like a glow lit up on her face. Like now I'm going to get to cook what I actually want to cook. Now I'm going to get
to play.
Yeah, exactly. She said it's called yamun sen. It's made with the mung bean noodles, glass noodles that actually have nutritional aspects to them. And she was really excited. It was a delicious bite of food.
It was really good.
And all of her food was good, right? I mean,
I got the pho. Savannah and I split a 4-piece Asian wings as an appetizer. The edamame was fantastic. I tried Savannah's ramen. It was fantastic. And I haven't had pho in a long time.
Yeah.
But my pho was good. It was fantastic. I can't wait to go back.
Yes, and I told you that I had understood that the wings were kind of a specialty of hers, and then you and Savannah started talking about wings, and the boys are coming home, and you're going to make your wings.
I'm going to make wings for the boys the next time they're in town.
I was so glad to get to go to Jessica's restaurant and for her to have the time in that moment, and it sounds to me like she wants that. So for those of you that live in our area, that live in the Corpus Christi area, it's called Hom Pom Cafe. And it's Asian Fusion Eats. Please go there. Say hi to Jessica, the owner and the chef. And if you have special dietary needs, let her know. And she makes fantastic food.
And if you don't live near us, go find a fantastic Asian fusion place that's locally owned wherever you live.
Ask questions is what I would say. Just ask questions because they never even know you need it or want it unless you ask.
And no matter where you live, you can become a sponsor of ours at our website, dinnertabletalks.com. We got a new sponsor this week. That's someone that goes in and sets up a monthly tip in the tip jar.
We got a sponsor?
We did.
Oh.
And we've got a super fun thing going on at our Facebook page. If you go there, pinned to the top, just search Dinner Table Talks on Facebook, is our chicken naming contest. 5 names, you guys selected them. Pepper, Audrey Henburn, Houdini, Millie, Dirty Martini. You can vote there. There is a clear leader right now. I don't want to say what it is. I don't want to influence anybody, but it's not my favorite name. I have a feeling
it's Audrey Henburn because that's the one I see on Facebook that people are naming the most with my own, data analysis of nothing. Unanswered questions.
You know how you can Google and find out anything right now?
Yeah.
You know what you can't find? What to do when you boil eggs so that the white, the boiled hard white, is nice and thick and the yolk is centered up in it.
Uh-huh.
I tried every word I could.
To figure that out. I finally found a comment in a thing about boiling eggs. Uh-huh.
I've heard that storing the eggs with the point side down helps with this. Okay, so I go collect eggs every day when I get home from work. I carton up the ones that are ready to be sold, and the ones that have a smudge or something on them, or the ones that
have a little peck.
Well, no, the ones that have a hole in them because someone pecked an egg, I throw down into their slop bowl, and they come and eat their own young. It's what it is, man. Chickens eat everything. But no matter if I'm putting them in an egg carton or putting them over aside for us to eat,
you always put
I'm putting the big part down on the bottom. The way that you would find them when you open an egg carton from the grocery store. I've heard that storing the eggs with the point size down helps with this, centering up the yolk when you boil them. That's what I do and seldom have a problem with really thin whites caused by off-center yolks. So there's really only one thing to do.
Try it. We're having an experiment.
3 or so that are point side up and 3 or so that are point side down for a week. And then I'll boil them all. I'll be able to figure out which was which. And then we'll crack those babies open and see if that solves our problem.
Fun.
I'll do that before next week.
Okay. Hey, you guys out there, y'all should do it too. Play the experiment at home.
And then, of course, we're continuing our conversation about blue zones.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this came up at lunch today when Jessica said, I'm a medical chef. The idea that these noodles are made out of mung bean and just these cultural misunderstandings that we have that have been a part of the Blue Zone conversation, and just having a better idea of like, well, you can eat mung bean noodles and they're actually really, really delicious, soft, pliable noodles. And we talked about how when I get fettuccine and it's made with some other gluten-free option.
Oh, you mean instead of the typical durum semolina flour pasta?
Right,
okay.
Right. It just never is right. If I'm going to eat noodles, I'm going to eat the ones that are,
naturally gluten-free?
Well, yeah.
Instead of reproduced noodles with gluten-free ingredients.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
with
just
you.
something about how it's just not, I'm not saying that that's like a standard that has to exist across all, because my mom made the spaghetti chicken
casserole, one of your favorite things.
Oh my God, that's one of my
But she made it with gluten-free spaghetti noodles.
And it was perfect.
Which are going to be made with like chickpeas or, instead of that flour.
And when I go to Bellino's, I'm going to eat the noodles that they have for gluten-free, right?
They, like Hom Pom, have those options available when a customer needs it.
But I think that it's interesting to have all of these different conversations from these blue zones and to be talking about, the different types of foods that could be available. You guys know I always talk about pakoras that are spinach and then they're fried in lentil batter.
Right.
I truly don't even have problems with the Indian cuisine.
And it doesn't have a fakeness to it of them trying to take something that normally has gluten and then putting in some kind of gluten-free substitution. And it's not quite exactly the way you remembered it from before you went that direction.
I think what we're talking about now is different options, and the Blue Zone is keeping that conversation flowing at the dinner table. And I think that that's a great place for that to happen.
So quick recap. Blue zones are these 5 geographical areas around the world where people live longer and typically live healthier while they live longer. And for the last 4 or 5 episodes, we've been discussing them one at a time. It started when you said you should make this goat
cigarelli.
That was Cretan style. Style.
And last week we were freeing the taco with some cultural shaming related to the breakfast taco and the beans and the.
So let's go backward. Last week we talked about the Nicoya Peninsula, an isolated part of Costa Rica. The week before that we talked about the Italian island of Sardinia. The week before that we talked about Loma Linda, California. This week we're going to talk about Okinawa, Japan. And we really are getting into these are the similarities over and over and over again, even though these places are thousands of miles from one another. Even though the religious tenets at the Loma Linda, California that kind of dictate the foods that they're eating aren't the same as folks in Okinawa, Japan, clearly.
Right.
Well, what do they have in common? A largely plant-based diet, mostly locally or regionally grown so that they know what's in the food. An active lifestyle even well into your elder years. And like that Sardinian concept that we talked about last week, in Japan, they call this philosophy an ikigai, purpose. The reason why I get up in the morning. And this purpose-imbued life gives them clear roles of responsibility that doesn't end when it's time to check grandma or grandpa into the retirement community.
Yeah, and I think just the concept of purpose, God, I'm learning so much about why would I get up every day? Why would I get up every day? And when you have understanding about purpose, not only do you get up every day, but you get up every day trying to be as well as possible, to be there as long as possible, to live your purpose. It's a very, very essential part of wellness and life.
Specific to Okinawa, a high natural soy diet, natural soy being the key word there. And then medical gardens that you find in almost every backyard or certainly every community that are mugwort, ginger, turmeric, those culture-specific foods that are really known to be healthy.
I think that might have just kicked off some thoughts in my mind about building medical gardens. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a new idea.
These are superfoods, and I'm growing them purposefully.
Yeah, this garden right here is medicinal on purpose. That's why I grow these plants. Because I grow things everybody that knows anything about my growing, I grow things kind of random. Having a very specific garden that is a medicine garden so that you can say these are things, this one works for this and this one works for this. Because some of the things that I'm doing here at the farm with some of the classes and stuff like that with my friend Cassie Vanetchik is we are doing exactly that. She's coming to the farm. I'm using my gardens to show you what the plants look like and to teach you how to grow them, medicine plants. She's teaching you the things that they can do for you medicinally. And then we're also going to be doing a class where we're actually going to make some tinctures and tonics and salves. It's cool to see these types of things, places where people are living longer. As we've been having these conversations each week, it's got me thinking about us looking at the lists of what things are we actively and consistently doing for our better wellness. And it's looking at all of them. And I know that, I know that these are not new concepts. There are people that are going through the blue zones and actively living the lifestyle as close to what they're learning from the different blue zone folks.
Sure.
That's what they're doing. I like the metrics of it.
I mean, like,
I'm not one of those people that's like, in 5 years, this is my goal and I've got to da-da-da-da-da. I like maps. I love maps, and I love to have a map laid out in front of me. I have all the choices on the map.
If I know where I'm going, I know how to get there, I can get there without fail.
That's right. Here it is, map. So there's some guidance, but it's my choice. I can go any road I want. Mine.
Two things I think we've got to conclude with like a full series and talk about the fifth and final blue zone, Ikaria, which is like Crete, an isolated Greek island.
Oh, it's a Greek island also.
We're going back to the beginning of it.
Huh.
And if you're not on the Dinner Table Talk playlist on your YouTube channel, Aislinn Campbell on YouTube, I think I need to edit this whole Blue Zone series together as one big blump.
For the YouTube videos.
For the YouTube
That's
videos.
a great idea. That's a great idea. Do the folks that live in the blue zones actively watch and pay attention to the news and the things that are being said in the media? Or do they spend more time outside in their medicine gardens?
Right.
And walking?
Yeah. We're a blue zone.
Yeah, there's economics. It's hard times, whatever.
It's just what we are. We're a blue zone. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to turn off the television and go back outside, get some natural vitamin D, and get into my medical garden and just be a healthy person.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think.
I said it last week. There is so much variety coming out of your garden right now.
It's that time of year. It's fruiting season.
And when I left for work, you said, Leeks, because I was going to come home and make dinner.
I kind of go through phases. Like, I harvest things particularly for my customers on harvest day. But then I kind of make my way around the garden, and sometimes I'll harvest things just to look at them and just to decide whether, it's time for me to begin really harvesting that stuff. So I'll bring in onesies and twosies or whatever. And the onesies and the twosies go in our refrigerator. I'm like, okay, we've got leeks, and they're going bad. Like, if they're going down, leeks are going down.
I thought you were just whispering in my ear, let this rattle around in your head all day, Joe, because when you come home to make dinner, I hope that leeks will be involved. And, of course, that's exactly what I did. Got on my Google, started looking up some leek things, but around that time, you recipe bombed me, and I love it when you do it, and I love the recipe that you send.
I'm good at it.
I mentioned eggs. We are overflowing with the eggs, too. So, Joe, Pea Frittata...
Yeah.
With leeks and Parmesan. I said, I know we've got the leeks.
Uh-huh.
I immediately thought in my head, no Parmesan, I'm going goat cheese. But do we have peas?
Well, yeah, I grew sugar peas this year, sweet peas. Those big fat, the ones a lot of kids like to eat. You eat them raw. Mm-hmm.
Find them in a lot of Asian stir fries and stuff.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The timing of them has been a little bit challenging. I think that I might have been 1 or 2 weeks a little bit later than would have been perfect, but I did a good job, so I've been getting a lot of peas. But the thing is that they need a lot of water, and we've not had a lot of water. The weather has been intense, and the humidity, humidity but no water, historical winds. I mean, it's just been already
no rain in the
spring.
forecast, even if I look at it today.
Yeah, 90-degree temperatures, not sustained, but reaching those 90-degree days, and peas don't like any of that. So I'm trying to figure out how to get the best amount of harvests I can get from what I did, because A, it was a lot of work, B, it was a lot of seeds, C, it took up a lot of space, and now I want to get something out of these things that are happening. So I began testing what it would taste like if I just shelled the peas and got the kind of rough, tough, hard part off and got the big fat peas inside. And other people may know this thing and I just didn't know it yet. This is really my first big pea harvest. It's challenging here, but I got it this year. Okay, so what do I do with these? Well, black-eyed peas in the summer, we shell off those hard outside places. If you're making beans, you snap and string and do all of that. So if I take those, do I have enough of these little baby peas, like the shelled little baby peas, to make something good? And I want you to put them in a dish so that I can then go, is it worth my time to shell some of these peas for my customers?
Because the educated customers know they're getting something special.
Yes.
Right.
It's good.
Okay, Joe, will you tell us at which past episode we talked about a frittata? Sure, Joe. That's episode 3.19, where we discuss frittatas and stratas, which are basically frittatas made with bread as well. Thanks, Joe. My frittata recipe, and you can Google this, New York Times frittata recipe. They've got the baseline and the explanation of how to make a delicious, fluffy frittata. There's an egg to dairy ratio. If you're going to add cheese, add this much. And then even above that ratio, how many vegetables is too many, too few? Meat. So every time I make a frittata for you, I go back to that recipe, but then I customize it with whatever we're using that night.
Yes. This time you did it different.
Well, your recipe, I just followed it.
Yes. It was different too, and I know it was noticeably different.
So I told you I needed a cup of peas, and you got busy shelling.
Yep.
And when I got home, they were ready to go.
Yep.
The leeks, of course, the eggs, the milk, the cheese, a dash of nutmeg. That was new. This recipe says 1 small bunch of each parsley, chives, and oregano, and a few sprigs of each thyme, basil, sage. I'm getting all my prep done. I said, hon, if you have any parsley, chives, oregano, thyme, basil, sage, I could use it.
I had all of that except the basil, and I probably could have found some basil if I'd looked really hard.
You brought in a beautiful pile of all of those herbs. And because the recipe doesn't say a tablespoon, a cup, whatever, I just went very liberal.
It needed more eggs. That's for the amount of herbs and all that perfectness, it was so perfect. And the goat cheese was perfect. And the peas were perfect. Everything was perfect. It needed more eggs, though, to soften it.
All of that flavor a little diluted with a thicker frittata because more eggs.
Yeah, and maybe when you were asking me what was the difference, that to me it wasn't quite, it was a little bit too firm. And I liked the amount of flavors per egg, but I needed it to be
fluffier.
Yeah, fluffier.
The flavor was spot on.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Of course, like I always do, I'm going to post this recipe on our Facebook page. You can go there and find it. It's in the show notes right now, and whatever you're listening, the show notes have this recipe in it. If you're not going to pull the leeks out of your own garden, get over to the grocery store because leeks are probably there. And they deliver such an interesting onion-ish flavor, but it's different enough to where you're tasting a different variety.
Yeah, and you could buy a bag of frozen organic peas really easily.
And I went overboard on the leeks probably. I really wanted it to have that leek, onion, light onion, flavorful, robust flavor that a leek provides. It was delicious.
Did you put any of my onions in there too?
No. I followed the recipe.
Okay, gotcha. My onions are coming out right now, and they're also delicious. And some of them are curing, but also we're eating them, and that's just what it is.
So that's a demonstration of the different herbs and a couple of the vegetables.
That's old school. That's OG Dinner Table Talk Season 1, by the way.
Last night, we got home a little late, and I wanted to get dinner on the table as early as I could. So I said, I'm going to do something easy. And I threw a couple of chicken leg quarters, heavily herbed, into the Instant Pot.
I went right out to the garden and just snipped it all up.
Yes, you did. And then I also wanted to do oven roasted vegetables. That's parchment paper on your baking sheet. But I said, hon, let's take everything we've got. Broccoli and cauliflower from the farmer's market, but I think you grew everything else.
Scallions. Carrots. Peas.
A beet
beans,
or two.
Beets, radishes. I don't even know. A little bit of everything.
I cut them up into the same size. That broccoli floret's going to be the same size as the piece of beet. Put them in a big bowl, salt, pepper, olive oil. You're not drowning them, you're coating them. That's very important. Mm-hmm. I was going simple on purpose, but I think next time I'll throw a little onion powder, garlic powders, that kind of thing in there. But this time I just shook. You're tossing that all together, dumping them out onto your cookie sheet or cookie sheets so that there's airspace around every single piece of vegetable. You don't want them to get soggy. You want them to get baked from all directions.
Crispy. And then maybe you should consider different vegetables, sizes are going to cook a little bit differently.
I will do it a little bit differently.
Oh, I didn't even name the squash. The tiny little yellow squash.
Yes.
Oh my God, those were so good. They were cooked perfectly. And the tinier, smaller pieces of broccoli were cooked perfectly.
But the bigger ones were a little...
scallions were, those were divine because it was almost like a little fried onion.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're talking about treat it more like an Asian stir fry when certain ingredients are going to require more time in that hot wok than other ingredients depending on their size and their density. So if I'm using 2 cookie sheets, which I did, rather than completely random, use the first one for the things that take a little bit longer to cook, put it in first. Yeah. Time it all out correctly, put the second one in because those things don't take quite as long. Yeah. When you pull them all out, everything's perfect.
I think so.
I'm looking
Roasting
forward.
vegetables is the way to go, man.
I served it to you with that bottle of aged balsamic vinegar because I knew that maybe you might want to splash a little bit on that rather than doing it myself. I wanted to give them to you not too frou-frued.
Yeah.
I wanted you to taste each vegetable's characteristic. I'm going to make this while you're in this bounty a little more often than I normally do.
Yeah.
I want to get this perfect and then write down the recipe so that I can share it. Otherwise, I'm a jazz musician in that kitchen, baby. It was all improv.
You could also do it with some pasta as well. Mm-hmm.
Lemon and butter is where my head goes on that.
Yep, exactly.
I love improving in that kitchen.
I would love it if you'd make that chicken cacciatore again. That was freaking divine.
Requests?
Mm-hmm. And we're about to get into tomato season. And by the way, I brought in an eggplant. Yeah, baby.
Okay, my mind immediately goes to an eggplant parmesan first out of the season, big, especially if you got tomatoes coming out too.
It's just a little prince though, so it's a little bitty guy.
But there's more on the way.
There's more on the way, but that one's the early one, so it needs its special crowning. I'm the first eggplant.
You want me to put it on some kind of throne of something?
Well, we've done that with these tiny little yellow squash that have been coming off. Every little yellow squash, we're oh my God.
I guess all I'm saying is stay tuned because we got some great food coming at you.
Dude, I've got melons growing, you guys. I've got pumpkins growing, and they're putting on. Putting on.
You have got big, sweet, juicy melons. 50 years, Aislinn. 50 years I've lived on this earth, and I've never, ever been stung by a bee.
I think that's an interesting
My
concept.
record has been broken.
Mm-hmm. You were standing next to me with a headlamp on your head, and we were at the back of the pasture in the dark, and a man in a white suit was walking by with a beehive.
Yep.
And you got stung by a bee.
That bee came straight for that light and hit me right and in the ear. And I was like, don't agitate. And he got me.
You're like, I just got stung by a bee.
Now, why do we have men in white suits delivering beehives in the middle of the night?
We have 2 hives now at Freedom Harvest Farms. They are not Freedom Harvest Farms hives. They are here for a bee farmer to harvest honey. And not only do we get a little bit of honey, but we also get some amazing bees to help pollinate all of our beautiful flowers and vegetables and all the things that we like to have pollinators for us. Plus, it's really cool to have bees at your farm.
I texted Michael, our beekeeping friend, and said, life feels better knowing that the bees are out here, if that makes any sense to you.
Does it?
It does. Bees are fascinating creatures. Mm-hmm. When a bee finds a patch of delicious pollen wherever it does and then flies back to the hive, when it goes into the hive, it literally, Google this, does a dance that is showing the bees around it how far it moves while it's dancing and the direction that it takes a left or a right while it's dancing, how to find the same pollen.
Yeah, years of doing that stuff at the Learning Garden and doing all the educational stuff and partnering up with different beekeepers in town. we would bring in people to have conversations and teach the kids. And that was always a fun thing, was that, especially when the honeybee queen, I don't know if y'all know that there's a honeybee queen, you know, like a young woman that gets a sash and she's the queen honeybee. I thought that was cute. And so she would come and meet the kids, and then she would do a bee dance for them, and she would show them pictures.
Miss Honeybee Queen.
Especially with the kids, because you like myth busting, like you said, in these urban areas.
Bees are to be feared. Bees are going to sting you. If you see a bee, it's on its way to try to hurt you.
My experience
None of that is
with
true.
bees is that the only time that a bee stings you, a natural bee, just a regular old honeybee, is when they're scared. They're being defensive. And you can tell, they usually warn you first, most of the time. Your guy, that was a whole different situation, because the light on your head, and
in the middle of the night,
and he was already, they were already, you know, whatever.
Feelings.
So, but most of the time when I'm out there in a garden, I can tell you when there's a bee that's frustrated, irritated, I'm in its way, something's wrong, it's off, it's not right. And so I just, you know, try to move away or change something about me, like move around in a different way so that my body makes a different smell, you know, like anything I can do to basically get that bee to go back on course.
Right.
Go back on course. You're fine. Everything's fine. Don't swat at you. I mean, that's all it is. They're just defensive, and they're trying to warn you, like, you're in my way. And Michael was saying that, you know, they need to calm down back there in the back, because they're new.
He brought them with those hives sealed, and they chilled out overnight. He came back the next day to open the door, so to speak.
You know, he was kind of trying to stand around. He's in a bee suit, right? But he's got a swarm of bees hanging out around him. So it's not like he can like jump in the truck with me, because the bees will come in with him, you know? So he's basically just waiting out the bees. He goes, they don't like air conditioning. He goes, they don't like this exhaust from the car. So like eventually if
they're there to do a job. If you leave them alone, they'll do it.
Yeah. But what he was saying was, well, don't weed eat or mow within 30 feet of them. Just leave them alone. Just let them have their space, have their reign. But he was also saying that when a forager goes out, if you accidentally get in its pathway on its way home, it gets confused. It can send out an alert. And so
fascinating.
At this time of night, when they start to go to bed, don't stand in their pathway to get back into their home, because you throw them off. Right. And then they send out an alert, right? So you don't want to upset the whole hive. They're defensive little creatures, but they're not here to attack you. They don't give a shit about you.
Right.
Like, you're in their way. That's it.
Unless you're covered in pollen, they don't care about you at all.
Right, exactly. Now, Michael is a beekeeper, and he does bee removal as well. Mm-hmm. The name of his business is Gulf Grove Farms and Bee Rescue. These are his bees. We're here to be a part of it.
Sure, he collected those bees from hives that he has, puts them in. You've seen photographs of a beehive. You open the lid, and it's got those row of frames, they're called, and you pull that out, and that's when you see folks with their utensil cutting the honeycomb and the honey off of it. Right now, those are empty, meaning there's zero honey in there.
Right.
They are starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But their natural instincts and the communities that bees build without any help from anybody means that honey production will begin. Because honey, of course, is food. Mm-hmm. They're making their food. Mm-hmm. Each of those two boxes, hives, has a queen. There are two. They know which box to go to and leave from and come back to and do their dance and deposit their pollen so that the honey-making bees can make honey. Mm-hmm. It's all going to happen right here. So hell yes, it makes me feel good to know those bees are around. Also, the first question I asked when I got back into the truck with a throbbing face was, how far does a bee fly? We're putting these way back in the pasture.
Yes.
Away from your gardens.
Well, and the most important thing he asked me about right away when he came over to inspect the farm to see if it was a place where it would be good to put was, do you have water available? And they like dirty water, he says. So the tank is not exactly dirty water. It's mid, as Savannah would call it.
Yes. The answer, 3 miles. A bee, a honeybee, if the hive is the center of its flying radius, will fly 3 miles, up to 3 miles away and back.
Yep.
Well, of course, your gardens are well within that.
And the tank. And we talked some about me getting a bee suit and then, moving to the point where I would have my own hive. But at this point, this is fantastic because it's really just an opportunity to get a little bit of honey that we can use for things around the house.
Yeah.
Or at an event that comes from our farm.
From our farm,
This is what the honey at Freedom Harvest Farms tastes like based on the flowers that we grow here and the things that we have on our property.
A lot of people use honey as a allergy reliever, and of course it's always best to get honey from as close to your own environment as possible so that the bees are picking up the pollen from the actual things that are causing you irritation and your allergies.
Yep, that's exactly it. So we're going to have that medicine on our farm.
I think you asked him, how long will it take before you can harvest honey? He said about a year.
Yeah, so in about a year, he'll harvest all that honey, and he's got the equipment to do it correctly, and he's got the equipment to spin the honey. They used to bring those to the learning garden, too, and show them to the kids. Like, they'd spin the honey out and show the kids how that worked, you know? I just think it's such a great opportunity for learning for children.
He said that he'd come out about once a month in this time of year to just check out the bees, make sure everything's going well. When the spring comes, he'd come a little more often, because that's when, of course, you know, they're going to be a lot more active. I love the science of the nature.
Yeah.
I love the idea that you leave those bees alone and they will create this delectable goodie for you, the honey.
Yeah.
And with all of the planting that you're doing and all of that food that's coming out of the garden, the idea that we have our own bees.
Yeah, it's very cool.
We'll throw pictures of the hives up on our social media and stuff.
What keeps coming to my mind is just so many learning opportunities and us understanding more about the foods in the blue zones and talking about those foods and understanding glass noodle is a mung bean and those things are good for these particular medicine things. And, oh yeah, they grow medicinal gardens over there. And, oh yeah, honey that you can get on your farm by having pollinators on your farm. There's this thriving balance of ecosystem that's coming as we learn more or understand more about planet-wide nature and the interconnectedness of all of that stuff. And that's got me thinking about the 2 camps that Larry Joe and I are putting on this summer.
I was amazed when you told me this idea. And I'm not just saying that because we're doing a podcast right now.
It's something that I'm not sure I ever imagined that I would say, yeah, this is what I want to do, but I can see it coming together so naturally to have these family day camps because I want people to bring their children out. But I'm not really interested in being a summer camp. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
I don't want to be responsible for your children, but I want your children to come and I want to be able to teach them things. I want to teach adults. I love teaching children, though. It's so much fun.
Well, it's also a great opportunity for a family to learn some things and then go back home and institute them together.
Exactly, within their own family.
Sure.
Like, just because the kid brings home an idea from school to the parent doesn't mean that it's going to change anything in the household.
Likely wouldn't.
Right. Having these 3-day camps, we're doing one in June and we're doing one in July. And it's got me thinking because the core of what we're trying to talk about is these messages that I'm trying to give out. That is, first of all, we need to let things live in our ecosystem. Second of all, we need to understand what's living around us. And third of all, we need to be aware of how it energetically balances, the sustainability of it, okay? So then what we're taking with these camps is we're taking agriculture, and yes, ours is super, super small scale agriculture, but it's livestock and it's farm animals, agriculture. The goal is food. We're growing food. That's what agriculture is, whether it's small scale or super large scale. That's the important part of that. Then the bridge between agriculture and a healthy natural ecosystem, which is the part she really likes to investigate, is the naturalist part of things.
Sure.
The bridge between agriculture and a healthy natural environment is soil. Our soil and how healthy we're maintaining our soil.
Totally.
And that's the part that keeps all of it sustainable is because we're investing in these new knowledge ways of getting agriculture. And then we're learning how to integrate Mother Nature. These are the things you hear me talking about all the time.
You drive by acres and acres and acres of farmland, I'm using air quotes, that looks very sterile and very mono to come to your, as you call it, smaller scale, which looks vibrant and filled with life.
Right.
Which is exactly where I'd want my food to come from.
Well, yeah. I mean, for years and years and years, that's what the marketing was selling you, was that that's what it was coming from. But then now we know that's not at all where your food is coming from most of the time. And the families that would come out to something like this, they already understand we're on the right track out here. You know what I mean? They're like,
sure,
okay, we want to try to figure some of this stuff out as well. But to be able to come together and begin to learn with our hands in the dirt about things like, what is the healthy ecosystem for honeybee agriculture?
Right.
It's funny, you asked a question in our chicken group the other day, and I got to tell you guys, I am sick and effing tired of babysitting adults on Facebook.
Yeah, you and I co-admin a South Texas backyard chicken coop group.
And of course we do, because we love to talk about chickens.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that you and I, from the very beginning of this homesteading adventure, the chickens were ours. We both loved to talk about, watch. You were into chickens. I'm into chickens. We love our backyard chickens.
Chicken Run is a place of peace.
We put on backyard chicken coop tours with Grow Local South Texas. My point about all that is that I've been kind of down on it. Like, I do not want to do things in this Facebook group anymore. I don't even care. I'm so frustrated.
Facebook group shouldn't be hard work, but this one tends to be, because everyone's insistent on breaking Facebook's rule that you're not supposed to buy, trade, rehome chicken or eggs.
Facebook's rule.
Facebook's rule, not mine.
And here's the thing, is I'm going to tell you over and over and over again, be smarter than AI. It's not that hard. Just don't say certain words. You can handle it, right? All of that being said, I see you post this question. And the question is, what's the first piece of advice that you would give someone when they're going to get chickens? The first thing that comes to my mind now, after doing it as long as I'm doing it, have a baseline understanding of important life things related to that particular animal before you take their life into your hands.
Sure.
Because there's so many things that we do where we just kill animals because we don't know anything about how to make sure that they're not a rabbit in the middle of a 110-degree summer with no water in there.
Or some movie highlights a really cute dog breed, so let me go out and get one real quick before I even know what the hell I'm doing about this dog, and let it end up at the pound.
The chickens is an example, and we see it in the chicken group all the time. It's like, you didn't know anything about that.
No, I don't want these anymore.
Well, yeah, and even more important than that, it's like all my baby chickens died at the post office because they got sent and they were a day too late and the post office didn't call me, or I couldn't get to the post office to pick them up that day.
You ain't ready for chickens, bro.
I was like, dude, first of all, why are you ordering chickens when it's 800 degrees outside? Baby chickens don't do well in the heat. So there you see my frustrations coming out. You see the backyard chicken frustrations. But all of it is because, to me, these core central goals about having a homestead and wellness is let it live. Okay, well, in order to let something live, you got to know what it needs to be alive. You got to know what it is that's actually living around you. And then you got to try to come up with that energetic balance of, is it worth what I'm giving to make it live? Okay, so I use bees as an example. Is the energetic exchange going on there with a bee good enough for me to learn how to be a beekeeper, or whatever the next phases of that are? So these are the questions that are essentially being brought to the table with these family camps. Let's talk about what's happening in these real life agriculture and natural situations. How do we learn from some activity where we get to dig our hands in the dirt? And how do we do this together as a family and come up with ways to make sure that we all have access to natural spaces and healthy foods?
And parents of younger children, what more valuable lesson could there be than let me teach my kids where food really comes from?
Yes, I enjoy it. It's clearly part of my purpose. I'm always looking for ways to sustainably move into the next phase of understanding how I can produce some of my own food, but also teach other people how to produce their own food. So if you guys want to know more about that, you know how to get a hold of us. Well, hey, while we're in this intellectual vibe, why don't you kick over a question we can deep dive into?
Oh, I love this question. What is a song that immediately takes you back to a particular moment in your life?
I saw the sign and it opened up my eyes. I saw the sign. Now, I don't know if that's an important song or whether it means anything really important, but I remember that when I was a freshman, sophomore in high school, every single day on the way to school, that song would come on the radio exactly when we were pulling into the parking lot at the high school.
It's like you're back in high school all over again when that song comes on?
Well, and also one of those things, one of those nicknames you get stuck with because That's the sign of the time.
Sure.
Was Ace of Base.
Right,
I was
that was the
always
band.
Ace of Base. Oh, it's Ace of Base.
I like that nickname for you. I've got one. It came up earlier this week, actually, because we bought tickets to a concert. Jane's Addiction.
I'm so excited, by the way.
The album Nothing Shocking or Ritual de lo Habitual.
That's mine.
Several songs take me back to the second semester of my freshman year of college. It's when I found Jane's Addiction. It's when they kind of popped in a more nationwide college level.
Yeah.
And I told my daughter I was going through a depression and didn't realize it at the time. And that music, of course, is fantastic for keeping a depression going.
Yeah, I'm a huge Perry Farrell fan,
Yeah.
and that says a lot about the shit I've gone through mentally.
Nothing shocking. It takes me right back to my red Jeep at the parking lot of the thing when me
yeah.
and my friends were going out to get into some trouble that I'm not going to tell my daughter about quite yet. But I heard an interview with Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction and Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins, them sitting together. And the big kind of reveal in the interview was that they were going on tour together. And I love both of those bands. And I know that you're a huge fan of Jane's Addiction. I think when I mentioned the concert to you, you said, that's one of the ones that I haven't seen yet.
The first question is Perry Farrell on the tour?
It's not Jane's Addiction if he's not there.
No,
Right.
it is not.
It's Dave Navarro, Perry Farrell, and then some of the other original lineup.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
Their opening, Smashing Pumpkins, is the headliner of this
And
two-band
Smashing Pumpkins
show.
also. But we have seen the Smashing Pumpkins, although we haven't seen the Smashing Pumpkins.
Right, we saw Billy Corgan fronting a different band.
Yeah.
Today is the greatest day I've ever known.
No. Jane says... Be smarter than AI.
Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Dinner Table Talks. We will be back next Monday with a fresh episode. In the meantime,
Hit us up on social media, send us an email, DM us, whatever. We want to hear from you.
and we hope that you're enjoying the episodes as much as we enjoy creating them for you.